Lauren, and today I'm going to be showing you how I'm designing my June bullet journal spread. I'm so excited about this one. I decided to go with a whale ocean theme, and I'll show you some of the different reference photos that I used as inspiration for this spread. But yeah, super excited about this one. I don't think I've ever done an animal theme before. I know that I did a honeybee last year, I think. Anyway, so this one's a little bit different, but I felt like it was very fitting for June and the summer months. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I've already sketched everything out in pencil, and so I'm just going over it with my Micron pens, and I'm using the 03 size, I'm pretty sure, or 01 actually. I think it's 01. And I'm just kind of delicately going over all of the different outlines of the plants that I designed, and I did have a reference photo that I used for some of the little seaweed and different greenery that I'm using here. So I'll throw the photos that I used to kind of reference. And then for the whale, I actually had a really hard time getting the shape right. I definitely drew it all out, erased it, drew it all out again several times. So it probably took me 30 minutes to find a size and shape that I felt worked. So yeah, that did take a little bit longer, but once it was all outlined in pencil, it was super easy to go over it again in pen. So yeah, that's what I did. And I kind of wanted to have a few different variations of the seaweed and different plants that were arranged around there. So I did a few different kinds that were kind of flowy and twisty, and these were actually super fun to draw out, and I feel really happy about them. So yeah, and then I drew out some little clusters of bubbles all throughout the page, which I just feel like that added such a nice kind of whimsical touch to it, and it was kind of hard to get the circles perfect, so they're a little bit wonky, but I think they work. And then I found this quote as I was kind of researching ideas for this spread, and I feel like it was very fitting, and it says, "The world is full of magical things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow stronger." And I just really liked that, and yeah, I just felt like it was fitting for this spread here. So yeah, moving on, I'm adding a different type of seaweed to the other side, adding in those bubbles, which I just think are so cute. I feel like that's probably my favorite part of it, is the cute little bubbles. So anyway, then I outlined this calendar here and wrote out June in a little cursive font, and then just added in some of those seaweed and different green plants and stuff on the side. And this whole spread was actually pretty easy. I had the idea of the whale, and then I knew I wanted to add in some of the plants and stuff on the sides, and then the quote in the calendar just kind of fit in the middle center of it. So I felt like this was super simple. I didn't really want to do a complicated spread. I feel like I've been trying to alternate between something more complex and something more simple just for time purposes. I didn't have as much time to devote to this one, so I did want to keep it a little bit simple. So yeah, and then I debated if I wanted to use my markers and brush pens or if I wanted to do the watercolor painting, but I knew that I wanted to keep this spread pretty simple in terms of colors. So I definitely wanted to play around with kind of a warm and cool tone just because I kind of like that contrast. And I did want to add some pops of green, so I kept some of the seaweed a little bit more on the warm side. So I did these really light kind of almond orange colors, and then I used my green brush pens and I did the lighter one first, and then I went over it again and added in the darker color just to add a little bit of shading and depth to it. And I did something similar to the other seaweed. So I did a super light almond color, and then I went in and added in a darker orange to make it pop a little bit more. And then for the bubbles, I used a really light shade of gray that had a tint of blue to it. So yeah, I really liked that. And then for the whale, I used this blue kind of almost periwinkle color, and I just did like a basic shading and outline and just kind of covered the whole whale with this color. And because the markers kind of, they don't blend as well as maybe like a watercolor would, I wanted the strokes to be as smooth as possible. So I did take my time as I was outlining these, and then I kind of built up some of the contrast and added in some shadows and shading. So I played around with some of the different darker shades of gray and kind of worked my way around and added in some layers. So I grabbed a lighter gray, kind of went over the whole thing again just to make the whole thing look a little bit more neutral. I didn't want the whale to look like a periwinkle, like blue color, so I definitely added in some more gray just to make it a little bit more neutral, and added in, again, some of that shading and stuff. So this was a lot of light layers that I just kind of built up. And then for the like white part, I didn't want to leave it white. I really wanted to add in a little bit of gray, so I took my really light gray brush pen and went over it, and then I added in a little bit of stripes or lines to give it a little bit of shape. And then for the calendar, I did use that like kind of periwinkle blue gray color and kind of outlined the box again. I did go over it with my pen, but I just kind of wanted it to have a little bit more color, so I did that. And for some of the plants, I did kind of mix and blend the orange and almond colors with a gray just to make it a little bit more neutral. And again, I really like playing around with like the warm and cool tones. I just think it's like a really fun combination. So yeah, so that's kind of what I did. And then I did a similar thing on the other side where I'm using the green and adding in the darker green for contrast, still using those almond and orange colors for the other ones like I did on the other side of the page. So that's pretty much it for this cover and calendar page. And yeah, let's move on to the weekly spread. I kind of went back and forth with how I wanted this one to be outlined. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do the whale at like the top of the page and then have the days of the week at the bottom, or if I wanted the whale to be kind of the focal point right in the center, which is what I ended up doing. So yeah, and then I added like the calendar and June and then the days of the week on the outside and made the whale kind of that focal point in the center, which I think turned out really well. And then I added in all of the different plants and seaweed and bubbles just kind of around it, and this was so much fun to do. I loved it so much. And yeah, it just like felt like it went really smoothly, and yeah, it just flowed really well. So always happy when that happens. So yeah, I kind of just replicated the same types of plants that I did on the other spread, and I kind of mixed up some of the different pens that I was using. So for the bubbles, I used my 005, which is the smallest size that I have, and then for like the whale and the plants, I used my 01 and then 03, depending on what plant I was working on. So yeah, and like the fun thing about these plants is that like they are super scribbly. Like they're not perfect. All of the leaves are kind of a little like shaky, and I tend to have a shaky hand in general. I know it may not always look like it when I'm when I'm filming these, but I don't have the most steady hand. So it's kind of nice to work on some of these little like flowy leaves and stuff that don't have to be perfect, and that's kind of the whole point. So I kind of liked that. And then, yeah, wrote out the days of the week, and then I'm going in using my same brush pens, trying to stick with the same color scheme that I did on the calendar and cover page. So using that kind of periwinkle blue gray color and doing basic coloring in, and then adding in those shadows here, using my darker like grays and then lighter ones to just like color it in a little bit more. And yeah, I think it worked out really well, and I kind of like how the brush pens give it a little bit of an interesting texture. Yeah, I just think it looks a little bit different than I would have done it with watercolor, and part of me kind of wants to maybe do watercolor for like another week just to kind of see what that would look like in comparison to the markers. But yeah, I actually really like how they turned out. I think the markers are kind of fun, and yeah, just something a little bit different. So yeah, using the same color scheme where I'm kind of using those neutral colors, the almonds, the oranges, the greens, and adding in the contrast of those as well. And then using the same like gray for the bubbles, and yeah, just coloring everything in. Once it's all drawn out, it's pretty easy just to go in and color it, and it feels like a little coloring page. And I do remember when I was a kid, I loved coloring books and I loved filling all of them in. I was the kid that would actually go through and finish an entire coloring book just because it was fun. So I just feel like I'm reliving that like childhood experience. But anyway, that's pretty much it for the spread. I hope you enjoyed it. Here's the final flip through, and I will see you in the next video.